in the past. I think when I found mindfulness, I was very skeptical with what this was. You're asking me to just sit and meditate, but I realized it was so much more than that. It was really about digging deep within to become more self-aware of yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your relationships with others, even your body sensations. And during that entire journey, I realized that there's so much more that I don't know about myself. And mindfulness really forces you or kind of helps you to dig deep within and to sit with those uncomfortable emotions.
Welcome to Open House, where every conversation opens a new perspective. Today, we have Ms. Michelle Mah, the founder of Rebalance, a purpose-driven training consultancy focusing on mental well-being, resilience, and organizational development. Michelle is also a seasoned mindfulness and self-compassion trainer, offering globally renowned programs such as the Mindfulness-based Stress Reduction MBSR, yes, Search Inside Yourself, and Mindful Self-Compassion. Welcome, Michelle. Right, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So before we start and dive deep into the topic at hand, right, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you do?
My name is Michelle, and I'm the founder and trainer at Rebalance. And we are a purpose-led training consultancy that helps others with their mental well-being, emotional resilience, as well as we run programs and workshops around organizational development.
I see. That's very interesting. Now, I noticed that you mentioned that it's to combine the art of being human and science. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure.
It's very interesting.
I think the art of being human is really helping others to move from a state of just constantly doing to being. I think in Singapore, we are always in that hustle culture. So helping others to dig deep within, just to kind of do that inner work, knowing oneself, knowing others, knowing how to work with others, that makes for a more fulfilling and enriching life. And of course, we combine that with science-backed methodologies as well.
I see. So that's very interesting. So the whole purpose of the work that you do is to really draw out the human potential, right? And I think that's very interesting because on your socials, you're very open about, your personal journey and the struggles that you had, which led to burnout, bulimia, and body dysmorphia, right? Could you share a little bit more about that, so that we could all, understand, how that
Sure, absolutely. So just rewinding back to my journey as a fresh grad, I always say that I'm a product of the Singapore system. So, go to good school, get a good degree, and then go into the corporate workforce. And then from there, you just climb the corporate ladder. So when I graduated from a local university, I realized that this was not true. And it started with one panic attack, followed by multiple panic attacks that eventually led to burnout. And over those years, I never really sought help for it. I didn't know where to seek help for it. And eventually in 2016, I would say I kind of self-imploded into an eating disorder. So a combination of bulimia and body dysmorphia.
I see. Yeah. And this happened during university or while you were working?
This happened while I was working. At the time, I was in high pressure roles. So out of the 3 roles during that period of time, across 6 years, I held relatively challenging roles that required travel. It was always on, long hours, and being the type A achiever personality that I was at that time, and just kind of pushed through all of that struggles or challenges with brute force. And I didn't know how to stop or rest because at that time there was no frame of reference. There was no one that was pausing. There were no one that prioritized rest. Right. So when I got diagnosed with bulimia and body dysmorphia, I realized that I needed to prioritize healing. And that was a massive wake-up call for me. And I had 2 choices. I could stay in my role and continue my journey as a regional marketing manager at the age of 26, probably become a director by 28 to 30 years old, and jeopardize losing my life because eating disorders were really fatal. Or I could leave and prioritize healing. And I think the situation was pretty bad that I eventually left without a role just to do the inner work, just to heal and to find myself again.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, thank you so much for sharing that. It must have been hard for you to do that. But if I may just also ask, right, I think many of us may also struggle with that. Like, you're absolutely right. We have this like hustle culture where it's always switched on. The thing is, I think we don't know when to switch off. So at what point did you realize that, okay, I think something is not right? Like, I need to make a change. I need to get this. Because the eating disorder, by the time it comes to that, you know, it's already quite far along, right? But I'm sure at some point you may have realized that, okay, at this point, I need to do something.
Yeah.
Yes. And do you recall, or did you have any?
Yeah, it's still pretty vivid in my head as well. And I remember that wake-up call really vividly because I'm somebody that I live to eat. I don't eat to live. And for me, seeing food as my enemy was something that really shocked me because I no longer saw food as a friend. And it's something that's so basic as eating. You just don't know how to do it anymore. Because each time I ate, I would just run to the bathroom. There would be a purging incident. And I think that true wake-up call came when the episodes kind of escalated to about, I think, 10 overtimes per day. And when I did my full health body scan, the markers were quite off. I had fatty liver. I lost a drastic amount of weight. You know, as a woman, your monthly moon cycle didn't happen for 7 months. And each time there was that purging incident, I would literally feel like stuff coming out and your throat will be burning up. And at that time, I knew that I couldn't live like that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so sorry to hear that you had to go through that. And do you feel that, you know, the eating disorder was more of like you mentioned, is more of the reaction to what you were going through at work, right? Now, so in the environment that you were working in, would you be able to share, like, what were the toxic behaviors that you felt that you could not share with your colleagues or, you know, bosses?
I think for me, it was a lot of the constant traveling and that hustle culture, always on culture that never seems to take a pause. I think as human beings, it can be really easy to get distracted when we do things that we don't really pause to feel how we feel within. And that was just kind of like a vicious cycle. And the environment itself was pretty toxic as well. There was poor psychological safety. And I remember that one of my colleagues, someone that is relatively senior, you know, when you are away on holiday, on leave, she would drop a message and say, hey, what are you doing today? But for me, I'm like, that's our time off.
Right. Yeah. So there was no boundaries.
Yeah, no boundaries. And even on MC, she would drop a text, and I didn't feel like that was genuine because she did that to like multiple people.
Was it like to check on you sort of thing?
And work, of course. So I didn't feel like there was anyone that I could speak to about the condition. And I didn't know how to articulate about it as well.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, I think another question would be, how does someone recognize the signs that they are heading down this path, you know, like before it's too late?
I think the signs of distress can be quite telling. Things like you are perpetually exhausted, you have brain fog, you're not really motivated, you kind of drag your feet. And I remember at that time, I was constantly looking at the clock, like 6 p.m. knock off. I dreaded the commute to work. I dreaded doing things. I wasn't motivated, and it took a lot to just
get to work.
And I feel like if we do get in touch with ourselves a lot more, we'll be able to tell that there's something off, there's something not quite right. And then we can take steps to actively combat that. But the issue with society is that we don't prioritize that rest and that deliberate pause to even tune into ourselves.
Right. Now, coming to this, why did you then decide to focus on, you know, helping others with their well-being, burnout or stress?
Yeah, at the time I realized that after I started opening up, I realized that I was not alone. But I'm like, why is no one talking about it 8 years ago? And in the company itself, there wasn't employee assistance programs or EAPs like we have today in organizations. And I just thought to myself, there must be something that can be done for people, for them to know that they are not alone. And it was really from the journey of self-exploration, I found mindfulness and the transformative powers of how being mindful and being self-compassionate to oneself can really transform your relationship with yourself. And I felt we really needed it as a society, because no one tells us to be hard on ourselves, but
we just do it to
we
ourselves.
just do it to ourselves. Like, who told us to be hard on
nobody.
ourselves?
Yes, exactly.
And experiencing that firsthand, I thought, why not share that with the world? Because there's so many other people that needed to learn those preventative skills before it becomes something that's a lot bigger.
Correct.
Like depression, anxiety, or eating disorder like myself.
Now, you mentioned about mindfulness. Is that correlated to the inside out approach that you also share?
Absolutely. And as a type A person in the past, I think when I found mindfulness, I was very skeptical with what this was. You're asking me to just sit and meditate, but I realized it was so much more than that. It was really about digging deep within to become more self-aware of yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your relationships with others, even your body sensations. And during that entire journey, I realized that there's so much more that I don't know about myself. And mindfulness really forces you, or kind of helps you to dig deep within and to sit with those uncomfortable emotions. Because it's not that the challenging emotions will go away. I mean, life would be quite perfect if we can classify emotions as boxes, right? And just kind of throw away the unpleasant ones. But we can't, because we are human and we have that full range. But I think mindfulness helped me to develop a better relationship with emotions that were strong and emotions that were unpleasant. No one taught that in school. And when I was thrown into the corporate workforce, I felt like while I had the hard skills in order to thrive, I didn't have the soft skills and that self-discovery process that needed me to dig deep within so that I can be the best version of myself. And mindfulness helped me to lean into that a lot more.
Now, I've always wondered this. Does perfectionism lead to burnout? Because we often see perfectionism. I don't know whether we still do, but I think for a long time, we often saw perfectionism as a good thing. Oh, you're such a perfectionist and all that. But I do think, being one myself, because I learned that it took a toll on me with time. As a writer, it was very challenging for me to deal with. Now, does it actually lead to burnout? And how can they, sort of learn to manage it?
I think there's no such thing as perfection. Gone through kind of like the hard way of knowing it all and going through that entire long journey of chasing for perfection and just striving to be number one. But I feel like perfection is a thing that shouldn't exist. I think we can pride ourselves on excellence, but fundamentally human beings are all perfectly imperfect.
That's right.
Human beings. And just accepting that helps us to reduce the distance between one and the other person. Just knowing that we are all imperfect and it's okay to slip up. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know it all. We don't always have to be the one that knows every single thing. And as a woman myself, I feel like additionally we put double or triple that pressure on ourselves to strive for perfection, but perfection doesn't really exist. So perfection may not lead to just burnouts, but probably an entire range of mental health conditions that may come up.
As business owners, they're constantly hustling as well. And I think it's important to also look at that, because how they feel kind of trickles and travels down to their team, right? And the work never ends for them. It's like 20-hour days, 30-hour days. So how can business owners learn to strike that balance? Because if they feel burned out, they are likely not going to do their best for their team, right? So how can they learn to strike that balance? Because their team's overall energy and well-being is dependent on that person, right? So how can they ensure that they put in that measures? Because they have to ensure a couple of things, right? The profitability of the company, the well-being of the staff and things like that.
I think for leaders themselves, it's, as the saying goes, it's lonely at the top. So I think to reduce that loneliness for them, it's also walking that talk when their well-being is declining, when their well-being is faltering. It's okay to share that with the team to some degree, to some extent, and being vulnerable and sharing that, being transparent with the team can actually help that leader gain trust and to foster a stronger sense of connection to people. But of course, as a leader, it's not just about seeking help itself, but also what are they doing for themselves other than the therapy that is helping them. For example, looking at different areas of their life where they may feel, okay, I need a bit of help there, and taking actions to alleviate that. Because I think leaders have to worry about the bottom line. And at the same time, they need to worry about their personal lives. It's a very difficult balance to strike. It's hard to get a leader to be vulnerable these days. Even asking a leader for feedback. How many leaders actually ask for feedback, you know? If a leader is willing to ask for feedback, get that feedback, and also utilize it as a way to hone his or her leadership style and journey, I think it can go a longer way in supporting that well-being piece in general.
And again, going back to that open communication with their team members. Now, coming to work-life culture, right? Do you think as a society, you know, Singapore should move towards shorter work week, or do you think this would be a wrong move?
I think it's not about the number of hours that we work. It's about how productive those hours are. So if we are moving to a 4-day work week, and that 4-day work we are working 14 to 16 long hours without actually being productive, I think that will be quite disastrous for the nation. And also bearing in mind that we are pretty small as a country. We have always prided ourselves as being self-sufficient, self-reliant. And I'm kind of in two minds as to the idea of whether business growth would be jeopardized if we move towards a 4-day work week. Just on the human front, I think we have heard about, you know, the great resignation, quiet quitting, lying flat. Employees are showing up at work physically, but mentally they are not quite there. So what are we doing to beef those self-efficacy levels up? Are they working in blocks where they feel most recharged? And if they are not, how can they utilize tools that recharge and nourish them so that they are more productive at work and that they demonstrate better results within a shorter period of time? I think we haven't really gotten to that point yet as a society.
Okay. And, you know, do you actually think that remote work will influence burnout?
I think remote work, from what we have seen from COVID, because we are basically all forced into lockdown and forced to work remotely, is that remote work can be a positive experience for many individuals, because, you know, the amount of time that you spend to commute to and from work, that can be better utilized. So you complete your tasks earlier and you can do the things that matter to you. And as a society, I think we tend to wrap work around life, but it should be the other way around. Like, it should be life around work. And having flexible working allows us to explore the other domains of life and not just work itself. Because we are also, you know, a parent, a caregiver, a friend. And these are the things that bring us joy and bring us deep purpose and fulfillment. And if we are spending so much time at work, 8 to 12 hours at work, and we are not prioritizing time for the things that truly matter, I think that's where burnout can truly happen. So flexi working helps us to work strategically as well as flexibly in a manner that is unique to an individual.
Right. Now, we come back to burnout again, right?
Yes.
After experiencing burnout, I do believe that some people can take a while to recover, up to a year or maybe even 6 months and things like that. Now, how can we sort of get them up and going again, or encourage this? Because it could be a loved one, it could be a family member, it could be a husband, a wife, and you see your loved one going through that. Because it also starts at home to support them. How can we as family members support someone who might be going through that to
Yeah.
sort of help with their recovery?
Yeah, I think spending time with them, checking in with them, or even having social support. Right now, we are seeing the rise of communities. So bring them for places where they are able to be in a community of like-minded individuals, depending on what their hobbies are. I think that can go a long way in supporting them and reigniting that spark, because a lot of burnout individuals are not motivated, or they feel like they may not want to go out and meet people and navigate that outward energy. So I feel there's no one size fits all, but fundamentally just also try and error, seeing what might help that individual. Therapy would be a good one as well. Just having someone neutral to speak to and to talk to about their stresses and help them to explore that journey that they took before it came into this point in their life, so that there can be proper coping mechanisms that can be taught for them, and so that they are able to utilize it for the road ahead as well.
So we're almost to the end, Michelle.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just ask you, is there such a thing as a perfect work-life balance, or should we strive for a realistic one? And what would you say is, sort of like the average realistic one?
I think there's no perfect work-life balance. It's really about finding harmony between the different spheres of our lives, be it work, family, self-development, whatever it is. We're constantly in that state of flux. Some days we may feel that we are put more towards work. Some days we are put less. We are put away from work, and it's finding that harmony, and it has to feel right with you. And it's really an exploratory journey. And we talk about work-life balance a lot, but does it really exist? Big question mark. Yeah, finding the harmony between the different spheres of life. I think it's an ongoing journey, and that people can hopefully take heart that they are not alone on this journey, that everyone else is also trying to figure out the same things as them. Yeah.
Yes, I think we all are. Now, before you go, Michelle, once again, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
Do you have any last words, like words of advice for everyone out there?
I think to anyone that's watching this, if you're struggling, knowing that you are not alone and that there's always help out there. Sometimes we need a bit of creativity to know what avenues there are for help. But I think it all starts with just sharing it. And people would be more likely to help and support you more than you think they would. Yeah.
Thank you so much once again. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of Open House. Remember, for every question you have, there's somebody out there with an answer. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share your comments, and, suggest any other topics that we could address, and, share this video with anyone who might benefit from it. You can also follow us on our socials for more updates. Until next time.